The United States Secret Service is an American federal law enforcement agency that is part of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. The sworn members are divided among the special agents, special officers and the Uniformed Division. Until March 1, 2003, the service was part of the U.S. Department of the Treasury. The U.S. Secret Service has two distinct areas of responsibility: financial crimes, covering missions such as prevention and investigation of counterfeiting of U.S. currency and U.S. Treasury securities, and investigation of major fraud. Protection, which entails ensuring the safety of current and former national leaders and their families, such as the President, past presidents, vice presidents, presidential candidates, visiting heads of state, and foreign embassies, Office of Foreign Missions, etc. The Secret Service's initial responsibility was to investigate counterfeiting of U.S. currency, which was rampant following the U.S. Civil War. The agency then evolved into the United States' first domestic intelligence and counterintelligence agency. Many of the agency's missions were later taken over by subsequent agencies such as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and Internal Revenue Service. Dual mission. The Secret Service has two primary missions: investigation of financial crimes and physical protection of designated protectees. Today the agency's primary investigative mission is to safeguard the payment and financial systems of the United States. These include crimes that involve financial institution fraud, computer and telecommunications fraud, false identification documents, access device fraud, advance fee fraud, electronic funds transfers and money laundering as it relates to the agency's core violations. After the 1901 assassination of President William McKinley, Congress also directed the Secret Service to protect the President of the United States. Protection remains the other key mission of the United States Secret Service. Today, the Secret Service is authorized by law to protect the President, the Vice President, the President-elect, and the Vice President-elect, the immediate families of the above individuals, former presidents and their spouses for their lifetimes except when the spouse divorces or remarries. From 1997 until 2013, legislation became effective limiting Secret Service protection to former presidents and their spouses to a period of 10 years from the date the former president leaves office. President Barack Obama signed legislation reversing this limit and reinstating lifetime protection on January 10, 2013. The widow or widower of a former president who dies in office or dies within a year of leaving office for a period of 1 year after the president's death, children of former presidents until age 16 or 10 years after the presidency. Former vice presidents, their spouses, and their children under age for up to 6 months from the date the former vice president leaves office, visiting heads of states or governments and their spouses traveling with them, other distinguished foreign visitors to the United States and official representatives of the United States performing special missions abroad, as directed by the President, major presidential and vice presidential candidates, the spouses of major presidential and vice presidential candidates, other individuals as designated per executive order of the President, national special security events, when designated as such by the Secretary of Homeland Security. Any of these individuals may decline Secret Service protection, except the President, the Vice President, the President-elect, and the Vice President-elect. When Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State in 2009, the Secret Service continued to protect her at home. However, the Diplomatic Security Service protected her while she was performing her duties as the Secretary of State, including foreign travel. The Secret Service investigates thousands of incidents a year of individuals threatening the President of the United States. The Director of Secret Service is appointed by the President of the United States. History: early years, with a reported 1/3 of the currency in circulation being counterfeit at the time, the Secret Service was created on July 5, 1865 in Washington, D.C., to suppress counterfeit currency. Chief William P. Wood was sworn in by Secretary of the Treasury Hugh McCulloch. It was commissioned in Washington, D.C. as the Secret Service division of the Department of the Treasury with the mission of suppressing counterfeiting. The legislation creating the agency was on Abraham Lincoln's desk the night he was assassinated. At the time, the only other federal law enforcement agencies were the United States Park Police, the U.S. Post Office Department's Office of Instructions and Mail Depredations, and the U.S. Marshal Service. The Marshals did not have the manpower to investigate all crime under federal jurisdiction, so the Secret Service began to investigate everything from murder to bank robbery to illegal gambling. After the assassination of President William McKinley in 1901, Congress informally requested that the Secret Service provide presidential protection. A year later, the Secret Service assumed full-time responsibility for presidential protection. In 1902, William Craig became the first Secret Service agent to die while serving, in a road accident while riding in the presidential carriage. The Secret Service was the first U.S. domestic intelligence and counterintelligence agency. Domestic intelligence collection and counterintelligence responsibilities were vested in the Federal Bureau of Investigation after the FBI's creation in 1908. The Secret Service assisted in arresting Japanese-American leaders and in the Japanese-American internment during World War II. The U.S. Secret Service is not an official part of the U.S. intelligence community. Truman assassination attempt. In 1950, President Harry S. Truman was residing in Blair House while the White House, across the street, was undergoing renovations. On November 1, 1950, two Puerto Rican nationalists, Oscar Collazo and Griselio Torresella, approached Blair House with the intent to assassinate President Truman. Collazo and Torresella opened fire on Private Leslie Koffelt and other White House police officers. Though mortally wounded by 3 shots from a 9mm Walther P-38 to his chest and abdomen, Private Koffelt returned fire, killing Torresella with a single shot to his head. As of 2012, Koffelt is the only member of the Secret Service to be killed while protecting a U.S. president against an assassination attempt. Collazo was also shot, but survived his injuries and served 29 years in prison before returning to Puerto Rico in late 1979. 1960s. In 1968, as a result of Robert F. Kennedy's assassination, Congress authorized protection of major presidential and vice presidential candidates and nominees. In 1965 and 1968, Congress also authorized lifetime protection of the spouses of deceased presidents unless they remarry and of the children of former presidents until age 16. 1980s and 90s. The Secret Service Presidential Protective Division safeguards the President of the United States and his immediate family. They work with other federal, state and local law enforcement agencies and the military to safeguard the President when he travels in Air Force One, Marine One, and by limousine and motorcades. Although the most visible role of the Secret Service today, personal protection is an anomaly in the responsibilities of an agency focused on fraud and counterfeiting. In 1984 the U.S. Congress passed the Comprehensive Crime Control Act, which extended the Secret Service's jurisdiction over credit card fraud and computer fraud. In 1990 the Secret Service initiated Operation Sun Devil, originally intended to be a sting against malicious hackers, allegedly responsible for disrupting telephone services across the entire United States. The operation, which was later described by Bruce Sterling in his book The Hacker Crackdown, affected a great number of people unrelated to hacking, and led to no convictions. The Secret Service, however, was sued and required to pay damages. In 1994 and 1995, it ran an undercover sting called Operation Cybersnare. The Secret Service investigates forgery of government checks, forgery of currency equivalents, and certain instances of wire fraud and credit card fraud. The reason for this combination of duties is that when the need for presidential protection became apparent in the early 20th century, few federal services had the necessary abilities and resources. The FBI, IRS, ATF, ICE, and Drug Enforcement Administration did not yet exist. The United States Marshal Service was the only other logical choice, providing protection for the president on a number of occasions. The Secret Service has concurrent jurisdiction with the FBI over certain violations of federal computer crime laws. They have created 24 electronic crimes task forces across the United States. These task forces are partnerships between the service, federal, state and local law enforcement, the private sector and academia aimed at combating technology-based crimes. In 1998, President Bill Clinton signed Presidential Decision Directive 62, which established national special security events. That directive made the Secret Service responsible for security at designated events. September 11, 2001, attacks. The New York City field office was located at 7 World Trade Center. Immediately after the September 11 attacks, special agents and other New York field office employees were among the first to respond with first aid. 67 special agents in New York City, at and near the New York field office, helped to set up siege areas and evacuate the towers. One Secret Service employee, Master Special Officer Craig Miller, died during the rescue efforts. On August 20, 2002, Director Brian L. Stafford awarded the Director's Valor Award to employees who assisted in the rescue attempts. Effective March 1, 2003, the Secret Service transferred from the Treasury to the newly established Department of Homeland Security. Domestic expansion. The USA Patriot Act, signed into law by President George W. Bush on October 26, 2001, mandated the U.S. Secret Service to establish a nationwide network of electronic crimes task forces to investigate and prevent attacks on financial and critical infrastructures in the United States. As such, this mandate expanded on the agency's first act for the New York Electronic Crimes Task Force, formed in 1995 which brought together federal, state and local law enforcement, prosecutors, private industry companies, and academia. The network prioritizes investigations that meet the following criteria: significant economic or community impact, participation of multiple district or transnational organized criminal groups, use of new technology as a means to commit crime. Currently, the network includes ECTFs in the following 28 U.S. cities. International expansion. On July 6, 2009, the U.S. Secret Service expanded its fight on cybercrime by creating the first European Electronic Crimes Task Force, based on the successful U.S. domestic model, through a Memorandum of Understanding with Italian police and postal officials. Over a year later, on August 9, 2010, the agency expanded its European involvement by creating its second overseas ECTF in the United Kingdom. Both task forces are said to concentrate on a wide range of computer-based criminal activity, including network intrusions, identity theft, other computer-related crimes affecting financial and other critical infrastructures. Currently, the overseas network includes ECTFs in the following European cities: European Electronic Crime Task Force, Rome, Italy, London, United Kingdom. Today, as of 2010, the service has over 6,500 employees, 3,200 special agents, 1,300 uniformed division officers, and 2,000 technical and administrative employees. Special agents serve on protective details, special teams, or sometimes investigate certain financial and homeland security-related crimes. Attacks on presidents. Since the 1960s, Presidents John F. Kennedy, Gerald Ford and Ronald Reagan have been attacked while appearing in public. Agents on scene though not injured during attacks on presidents include William Greer, and Roy Kellerman. One of the agents was Robert De Prospero, the special agent in charge of Reagan's Presidential Protective Division from January 1982 to April 1985. De Prospero was deputy to Jerry Parr, the SAIC of PPD during the Reagan assassination attempt on March 30, 1981. The Kennedy assassination spotlighted the bravery of two Secret Service agents. First, an agent protecting Mrs. Kennedy, Clint Hill, was riding in the car directly behind the presidential limousine only when the attack began. While the shooting continued, Hill leapt from the running board of the car he was riding on and jumped onto the back of the president's moving car and guided Mrs. Kennedy from the trunk back into the rear seat of the car. He then shielded the president and the First Lady with his body until the car arrived at the hospital. Rufus Youngblood was riding in the vice presidential car. When the shots were fired, he vaulted over the front seat and threw his body over Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson. That evening, Johnson called Secret Service Chief James J. Rowley and cited Youngblood's bravery. Youngblood would later recall some of this in his memoir, 20 Years in the Secret Service. The period following the Kennedy assassination was the most difficult in the modern history of the agency. Press reports indicated that morale among the agents was low for months following the assassination. The agency overhauled its procedures in the wake of the Kennedy killing. Training, which until that time had been confined largely to on-the-job efforts, was systematized and regularized. The Reagan assassination attempt also highlighted the bravery of several Secret Service agents, particularly Agent Tim McCarthy, who spread his stance to protect Reagan as 6 bullets were being fired by the would-be assassin, John Hinckley, Jr. McCarthy survived a .22 caliber round in the abdomen. For his bravery, McCarthy received the NCAA Award of Valor in 1982. Jerry Parr, the agent who pushed President Reagan into the limousine, and made the critical decision to divert the presidential motorcade to George Washington University Hospital instead of returning to the White House, was also honored with U.S. Congress commendations for his actions that day. After the near-successful assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, it was clear that the Secret Service needed to increase its efficiency to protect the president. Significant investigations, arrest and indictment of Max Ray Butler, co-founder of the Carders Market carding website. Butler was indicted by a federal grand jury in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, after his September 5, 2007 arrest, on wire fraud and identity theft charges. According to the indictment, Butler hacked over the Internet into computers at financial institutions and credit card processing centers and sold the tens of thousands of credit card numbers that he acquired in the process. Operation Firewall. In October 2004, 28 suspects located across 8 U.S. states and 6 countries were arrested on charges of identity theft, computer fraud, credit card fraud, and conspiracy. Nearly 30 national and foreign field offices of the U.S. Secret Service, including the newly established national ECTFs, and countless local enforcement agencies from around the globe, were involved in this operation. Collectively, the arrested suspects trafficked in at least 1.7 million stolen credit card numbers, which amounted to $4.3 million of losses to financial institutions. However, authorities estimated prevented loss to the industry to be in hundreds of millions of dollars. This over-year-long operation, which started in July 2003, led investigators to identify 3 cybercriminal groups: Shadow Crow, Carder Planet, and Dark Profits. Arrest and indictment of Albert Segvic Gonzalez and 11 individuals, 3 U.S. citizens, 1 from Estonia, 3 from Ukraine, 2 from the People's Republic of China, 1 from Belarus, and 1 known only by an online alias, were arrested for the theft and sale of more than 40 million credit and debit card numbers from major U.S. retailers, including TJX Companies, BJ's Wholesale Club, Office Max, Boston Market, Barnes & Noble, Sports Authority, Forever 21, and DSW. Gonzalez, the main organizer of the scheme, was charged with computer fraud, wire fraud, access device fraud, aggravated identity theft, and conspiracy for his leading role in the crime. Uniform Division. The Uniform Division is similar to the United States Capitol Police and is in charge of protecting the physical White House grounds and foreign diplomatic missions in the Washington, D.C. area. Established in 1922 as the White House Police, this organization was fully integrated into the Secret Service in 1930. In 1970, the protection of foreign diplomatic missions was added to the force's responsibilities, and its name was changed to the Executive Protective Service. The name United States Secret Service Uniform Division was adopted in 1977. With more than 1,300 officers as of 2010, the Uniform Division is responsible for security at the White House complex, the Vice President's residence, the Department of the Treasury, and foreign diplomatic missions in the Washington, D.C. area. Uniform Division officers carry out their protective responsibilities through a network of fixed security posts, foot, bicycle, vehicular and motorcycle patrols. The Uniform Division has 3 branches: the White House Branch, the Foreign Missions Branch, and the Naval Observatory Branch. Together they provide protection for the following: the President, Vice President, and their immediate families. Presidential candidates. The White House Complex. The Vice President's residence. The main Treasury Department building and its annex facility. And foreign diplomatic missions in the Washington, D.C., metropolitan area. Officers are responsible for providing additional support to the Secret Service's protective mission through the following special support groups: the Counter-Sniper Team, created in 1971. The CS's purpose is to provide specialized protective support to defend against long-range threats to Secret Service protectees. The K-9 Explosives Detection Unit, created in 1976, the mission of the K-9 unit is to provide skilled and specialized explosives detection support to protective efforts involving Secret Service protectees. The Emergency Response Team, formed in 1992, ERT's primary mission is to provide tactical response to unlawful intrusions and other protective challenges related to the White House and its grounds. ERT personnel receive specialized, advanced training and must maintain a high level of physical and operational proficiency. Officers assigned to CS, ERT, and K-9, are designated technicians to recognize their advanced training. Today these units are part of the agency's Special Operations Division. The Magnetometer Support Unit, formed to ensure that all persons entering secure areas occupied by Secret Service protectees are unarmed. The Secret Service began relying on magnetometer support by uniformed division officers to augment its protective efforts away from the White House following the attempt to assassinate President Ronald Reagan. The Secret Service Uniformed Division's statutory authority is set out in Title 18, A Section 3056A of the U.S. Code. Special Agent, at a minimum, a prospective agent must be a U.S. citizen, possess a current valid driver's license, possess visual acuity no worse than 20/60 uncorrected, correctable to 20/20 in each eye, and be between the ages of 21 and 37 at the time of appointment. However, preference-eligible veterans may apply after age 37. In 2009, the Office of Personnel Management issued implementation guidance on the Isabella v. Department of State Court Decision, OPM letter. Special agents receive basic training in 2 locations. The first phase, the Criminal Investigator Training Program, is conducted at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center at Glencoe, GA. The second phase, the Special Agent Training course, is conducted at the James J. Rowley Training Center, located in Beltsville, MD. A Secret Service agent's career consists of 3 phases. During Phase 1, Secret Service special agents spend their first 6 to 8 years on the job assigned to a field office. After their field experience, agents are usually transferred to a protective detail where they will stay for 4 to 7 years, during what is known as Phase 2 or the protection phase. Following their protective assignment, many agents return to the field, transfer to a headquarters office, a training office, or other Washington, D.C., based assignment for Phase 3 of their career. Promotions will affect the typical career path. An agent's working hours depend upon the assignment. Generally, an agent can expect to travel a lot and do a significant amount of shift work, especially during Phase 2. Throughout their career, agents continue their training. Special Officer: Special officers work within the Special Agent Division of the USSS and perform a wide range of security functions and support assignments as part of the protective mission for the Secret Service. Where special agents will alternate between protection and investigation assignments, special officers are hired only to work protection details. They must have a familiarity with all phases of protective responsibilities sufficient to assist in protective movements, cover designated security posts and drive protective vehicles. Assignments may include maintaining designated protective security posts, controlling the movement of persons into and around multiple Secret Service facilities and associated areas, inspecting all operational, safety, emergency, and convenience equipment of protective vehicles to ensure peak operating condition, driving protective or follow-up vehicles. monitoring and operating various communications equipment, and employing various advanced X-ray screening technologies in order to detect and identify high-risk items. Special officers are sworn law enforcement officers and are authorized to make arrests in connection with their official duties. Newly appointed special officers must successfully complete 8 weeks of intensive training at the Special Officer Basic Training Course at the Secret Service James J. Rowley Training Center just outside of Washington, D.C. The training includes courses such as criminal law, laws of arrest, search and seizure, control tactics, civil liability, emergency medicine, basic water safety, firearms and weapons handling, radio communications, emergency driving and physical fitness training. Weapons and equipment. Since the agency's inception, a variety of weapons have been carried by its agents. Previous firearms. Initially the firearms were privately procured and there was little if any standardization. In the 1930s, the USSS issued the Colt M1911A1 pistol in .45 ACP caliber. In the 1950s and 1960s, special agents carried the Smith & Wesson Model 36 and Colt Detective Special 38 special revolvers. Following President Kennedy's assassination, USSS special agents were authorized to carry the .357 Magnum Smith & Wesson Model 19 revolver. Between 1981 and 1991, the Secret Service issued the Smith & Wesson Model 19 and the Smith & Wesson Model 66.357 Magnum revolvers, with 2.5-inch barrels all the way up to the 4-inch barreled models, loaded with hollow point rounds. By 1992, the standard issue weapon became the SIG Sauer P2 28 9mm pistol. This weapon stayed in service through 1999. The Thompson submachine gun was replaced by the Uzi submachine gun in the 1970s. Uzis utilized by the Secret Service have the common characteristic of slightly shorter than standard barrels. This was due to the fact that the weapons had to be modified to fit inside standard-size Samsonite briefcases used to conceal them. The Uzi was phased out in the mid-1990s and replaced by the H&K MP5. The Secret Service was the last federal agency to use the Uzi. The M4 carbine was utilized by agents of the counter-assault team from the early 1990s until 2006 when it was replaced by the SR-16. Current weapons. The current sidearm for USSS agents is the SIG Sauer P229 chambered in .357 SIG, which entered service in 1999, and also the FN57 pistol. A variety of off-duty, backup, and undercover weapons are also authorized. Agents and officers are trained on standard shoulder weapons that include the FNP-90 submachine gun, the 9mm Heckler & Koch MP5 submachine gun, and the 12-gauge Remington 870 shotgun. The continued use of the MP5 remains a source of controversy as many other federal agencies have moved away from submachine guns altogether and replaced them with assault rifles. Despite this, the agency has no current plans to replace this weapon. As a less-than-lethal option, special agents, special officers and uniformed division officers are armed with the ASP baton and uniformed division officers carry OC pepper spray. Units assigned to the Special Operations Division carry a variety of non-standard weapons. The Counter-Assault Team and the Emergency Response Team are both issued the 5.56mm Knights Armament Company Senior 16C Kubi assault rifle. CAT also uses 12-gauge Remington 870 MCS breaching shotguns. Uniformed division technicians assigned to the counter-sniper team use custom-built .300 Winchester Magnum bolt-action rifles referred to as JARs. These rifles use Remington 700 actions in accuracy international stocks with Schmidt and Bender optics. CS technicians also use the 7.62mm KACS A25/MK11 Mod 0 semi-automatic sniper rifle with a Treasury 5.5x ACOG optic. The Department of Homeland Security has made numerous attempts to bring the Secret Service's weapons procurement in line with the rest of the department. The agency has resisted these inroads and currently maintains an independent acquisition process. A program to identify a replacement for the P-229 is in its formative stages. Communications. The agency uses Motorola XTS radios and surveillance kits in order to maintain communication and are known to use DES encryption keys. When operationally required, military-grade radios that utilize Type 1 encryption algorithms are fielded. Vehicles. When transporting the president in a motorcade, the Secret Service uses a fleet of custom-built armored Cadillac parade limousines, the newest and largest version of which is known as the Beast. Armored Chevrolet Suburbans are also used when logistics require such a vehicle or when a more low-profile appearance is required. For official movement, the limousine is affixed with U.S. and presidential flags and the presidential seal on the rear doors. For unofficial events, the vehicles are left sterile and unadorned. Attire. Special agents and special officers of the Secret Service wear attire that is appropriate for their surroundings. In most circumstances, the attire of a close protection shift is a conservative suit, but it can range from a tuxedo to a casual clothing as required by the environment. Stereotypically, Secret Service agents are often portrayed wearing reflective sunglasses and a communication earpiece. Often their attire is customized to conceal the wide array of equipment they wear while working protection assignments. Agents wear a distinctive lapel pin that identifies them to other agents. The attire for uniformed division officers includes standard police uniforms or utility uniforms and ballistic identification vests for members of the counter-sniper team, emergency response team, and K-9 officers. The shoulder patch of the uniformed division consists of the U.S. coat of arms on white or black, depending on the garment to which it is attached. Also, the shoulder patch is embroidered with U.S. Secret Service Uniformed Division Police around the emblem. Controversy. Summit of the Americas prostitution scandal. In April 2012, a scandal involving the president's security detail received international press attention. The scandal involved 11 agents and personnel from 4 branches of the U.S. military. They allegedly engaged prostitutes while assigned to protect the U.S. president at the 6th Summit of the Americas in Cartagena, Colombia. As of April 24, 2012, 9 employees had resigned or retired. After the incident was publicized, the Secret Service implemented new rules for its personnel. The rules prohibit personnel from visiting non-reputable establishments, and from consuming alcohol less than 10 hours before starting work. Additionally, they restrict who is allowed in hotel rooms. A few weeks later, stories emerged of Secret Service agents hiring strippers and prostitutes prior to Obama's 2011 visit to El Salvador. Directors. Field offices. The Secret Service has agents assigned to 136 field offices and the headquarters in Washington, D.C. While the field offices are located in cities throughout the United States and in Brazil, Bulgaria, Canada, Colombia, China, France, Interpol, Germany, Italy, Mexico, Europol, Romania, Russia, South Africa, Spain, Thailand, and the United Kingdom. In popular culture, films, Mr. 880, unlike most films with a Secret Service theme, this one features their anti-counterfeiting role. An agent tracks down an elderly man who counterfeits only small amounts of money. To Live and Die in LA, a Secret Service agent is determined to bring down by any means necessary a counterfeiter who murdered the agent's partner. Assassination. U.S. Secret Service agent Jay Killian must protect First Lady Lara Royce Craig from a plot on her life. The Bodyguard. Kevin Costner stars as a former Secret Service agent who is hired as a bodyguard to protect a music star, played by Whitney Houston, from an unknown stalker. In The Line of Fire, psychological thriller in which Clint Eastwood plays a Secret Service agent who had been on the Presidential Protection Detail during the John F. Kennedy assassination. He is now pursuing a deranged former CIA Special Operations assassin who is intent on killing the current U.S. president. Guarding Tess, Nicolas Cage plays an agent assigned to guard a former First Lady. Hackers. Secret Service agent Richard Gill is responsible for the pursuit of the young hackers throughout the entire film. First Kid. Sinbad and Timothy Busfield appear as Secret Service agents in charge of protecting the president's son. Murder at 1600 Inches, a thriller adaptation starring Wesley Snipes of the novel Murder in the White House by Margaret Truman. Wild Wild West, a steampunk western action comedy adaptation of The Wild Wild West, starring Will Smith and Kevin Kline. First Target. Daryl Hannah is a Secret Service agent who uncovers a plot involving senior U.S. politicians and rogue Secret Service agents to kill the president whilst on vacation. First Daughter, Katie Holmes as the daughter of the president, who goes to college. The Sentinel, thriller starring Michael Douglas as a veteran Secret Service agent, in which Secret Service agents investigate a potential assassination attempt and traitor in the service. Vantage Point, an assassination attempt on the President of the United States is seen from a different set of vantage points through the eyes of 8 witnesses. Dennis Quaid plays the Secret Service agent pursuing the terrorists. Olympus Has Fallen, an attempt to destroy and capture the White House and the President of United States, President Benjamin Asher, by a North Korean terrorist leader, Kang Yun-sak with his commandos. A Secret Service agent, Mike Banning, was trapped in the White House and works to save the president. White House Down, John Cale is a U.S. Capitol Police officer and is a hopeful candidate to be employed by the U.S. Secret Service. Cale attempts to foil a terrorist attack on the White House and save the president from the terrorists. Television, The Wild Wild West, a highly popular Western action series, set in the late 1860s. Starring Robert Conrad and Ross Martin as Secret Service agents James West and Artemus Gordon. West and Gordon pursue a variety of villains across the Old West and often report directly to President Ulysses S. Grant. 2 reunion telemovies were screened in 1979 and 1980, followed by the film Wild Wild West. The West Wing, this series offers a glimpse into the inner workings of a fictional White House administration, with members of the Secret Service regularly making appearances. 24, involves many characters and operations within the Secret Service as they protect the presidents throughout the series. NCIS, a TV series about the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. In Season 1, one of the main characters, Special Agent Caitlin Todd, is introduced as a Secret Service member in the first episode. After she is made a permanent member of the NCIS team, her past as a Secret Service agent is referenced frequently. Warehouse 13, a science fiction series about 2 Secret Service agents who are taken from their old job of guarding the president and instead are sent to track down artifacts with supernatural powers. Intelligence, U.S. Secret Service agent Riley Neal is recruited by the U.S. Cyber Command to provide protective services for Cyber Command agent Gabriel Vaughn, into whose brain a high-tech microchip has been implanted. Video games, Resident Evil 4, Leon S. Kennedy is revealed to have become a Secret Service agent after the events of Resident Evil 2. His mission in the game is to find the president's daughter, who has been kidnapped. Secret Service, a first-person shooter video game, developed by Cauldron Headquarters and published by Activision Value for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 2 and Xbox 360. Similar organizations, List of Protective Service Agencies, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, U.S. Diplomatic Security Service, U.S. Federal Protective Service, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, U.S. Marshal Service, see also. Armor, Ballistic Vest, Bodyguard, Commander-in-Chief's Guard. The American Revolutionary War unit that also had the dual responsibilities of protecting the Commander-in-Chief and the Continental Army's money. Imperial Guards, list of United States federal law enforcement agencies, Praetorian Guard, Secret Service Codename, SO-14 and SO-16, Special Detective Unit Guard Azar Washanau, VIP Protection Unit, references. Further reading, Roberts, Marcia. Looking Back and Seeing the Future. The United States Secret Service, 1865 to 1990. Association of Former Agents of the United States Secret Service. Emmett, Dan. Within Arm's Length, a Secret Service Agent's Definitive Inside Account of Protecting the President. New York, St. Martin's Press. ISBN A9781250044716. Costello, Mark. Big If. New York, W. W. Norton and Company. ISBN A978-0-393-05116-2. Kessler, Ronald. In the President's Secret Service, Behind the Scenes with Agents in the Line of Fire and the Presidents They Protect. New York, Three Rivers Press. ISBN A9780307461360. External links, official website, Protecting the U.S. President Abroad, by the British Broadcasting Corporation, Inside the Secret Service, slideshow by Life magazine, United States Secret Service at the Wayback Machine.